That looks like we are live, Mayor Cote, so you can begin when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. I'd like to call to order our Mayor's Council meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to first acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional and unceded territory of the Hul'qumi'num, Semiahmoo, and Squamish-speaking people. These refer to the language groups that more widely encompass the Indigenous people of many nations who continue to use the lands on whose territories TransLink works, operates, and serves. So I just want to confirm, Mike and Carol, all of the live streaming and attendance has been taken for this morning's meeting?
Yes, it has.
Okay,
Yep.
Wonderful. So we'll look just to start with the adoption of the agenda this morning.
Second.
So moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Yay.
Opposed, carried. And we're going to move to our minutes of the September 29th meeting.
Move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and I'm not seeing any hands, so I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye. Yay.
Opposed, carried. Okay, that brings us to our public delegations this morning. I understand we have one public delegate this morning, Mike.
Yes, we do. Joe Kunzler, who I believe you're familiar with, although I noticed he's not, he hasn't dialed in yet. So I would suggest that maybe if the body is willing, we can move ahead with the CEO report, and if he manages to join before the end of the meeting, we could come back to him.
Okay, well, why don't we move to item 3.1, the CEO report, and we can circle back if he does make it onto the line. So we're now moving on to item 3.1, which is our CEO report, and I'd like to pass it off to Kevin Quinn.
Okay, thank you, Chair Cote. Good morning, everyone. I'm so pleased to be speaking with you today. At our last meeting, I really spoke about how transit agencies really are no longer just about getting customers from A to B, and that I really believe we have a larger role to serve as a positive force for change in our communities. And I think one of the clearest examples of how TransLink has been going above and beyond the call of duty is by supporting the province's rollout of COVID-19 immunization efforts. Next slide, please. Over the year, we've partnered with local health authorities to provide residents of Metro Vancouver with access to the COVID-19 vaccine. We had a mobile vaccine bus that made it easier for our customers and members of the public to get vaccinated, with stops at 12 locations over 3 months, including Langley, White Rock, Maple Ridge, Tsawwassen, Burnaby, and Aldergrove. Interestingly, half of the doses administered were first doses. We also saw more than 100,000 people vaccinated by healthcare workers and over 160,000 COVID-19 tests conducted at our Coquitlam and South Surrey park and rides. On top of that, more than 3,200 trips were booked through HandyDart to help individuals get to and from their vaccination appointments. TransLink and our operating companies are really integrated into the fabric of our communities, and I want you to know we take that responsibility very seriously. The numbers that I just shared with you are really a small part of the work that we've been doing to keep our communities safe, but we know that it's vital that we continue to do all that we can to stop the spread of COVID-19. And that's why 2 weeks ago, we announced a COVID-19 vaccination policy for all TransLink enterprise employees and contractors that will require all 8,300 employees to be fully vaccinated by November 29th. We know that vaccination is our best shield against the virus, and implementing this policy is a really important layer in protecting both our employees and our customers. This decision comes at a really critical time, especially as more customers are returning to transit, and it's an important step to help us restore ridership, which depends on reaching a high vaccination rate so our region and our economy can fully reopen. Next slide, please. I want to give some recent ridership numbers that show we're continuing to see good growth across our system. This past week, preliminary reports show we've reached 57.4% of pre-pandemic boardings, with over 5 million weekly boardings. And I'm happy to report that we've surpassed our September numbers, and that we're now seeing the highest percent of ridership we've seen on our system since pre-COVID. And this growth is clearly a step in the right direction. This steady increase in ridership is a really strong signal that customers are confident coming back to transit to connect them to the people, to the places that matter most to them. But I want to also note that we can't be complacent. We've got to look beyond the pandemic as we plan for the future of a growing region. Next slide, please. So that leads me to Transport 2050. Last week, we introduced our Transport 2050 regional transportation strategy, our blueprint to help build a better future for Metro Vancouver. And through a really extensive 2-year engagement process, we've collected opinions and ideas from all over the region. We've listened to and learned what the region values, prioritizes, and wants done over the next 30 years. We took all of the ideas and priorities we heard, we put them into a comprehensive draft strategy. As many of you already know, one of my top priorities at TransLink is to hear from our employees and customers on their diverse perspectives and creative ideas for the future of our transit system. And it goes without saying that I'm very excited to engage in this important conversation and make this strategy a reality. There are over 100 action items in this proposed regional transportation strategy, but there are 2 that I do want to highlight that'll go a long way in creating a more livable and more sustainable Metro Vancouver. The first action is quadrupling our rapid transit network to create 300 kilometers of brand new rapid transit connections over the next 30 years, whether it's SkyTrain, subway, light rail, or bus rapid transit. The second is creating an 850-kilometer traffic-separated major bikeway network to connect communities with greener transportation and to give people better and safer options to get around without a car. In our final phase of engagement, we're asking the public if we captured their thoughts, ideas, and vision for the next 30 years in our strategy. And that survey runs until October 29th. With 1 week left, we've already received hundreds of survey responses from people around the region. To you mayors, I ask that you please encourage your constituents to read the strategy and let us know if we got it right. What excites me about this strategy is that it really emphasizes sustainability and creates a greener and more efficient transportation future for the region. Next slide, please. I want to just take a minute and note the ongoing climate crisis. Over the last year, we have seen large volumes of vehicle traffic on the roads, leading to traffic congestion and patterns of unsustainable travel. This is a pressing issue in Metro Vancouver and around the world. And in the coming weeks, global leaders are coming together to address the climate emergency at the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference. And I'm sure, like many of you, I'll be following the conversations and resulting actions from Canadian and international leaders at this conference. As regional leaders, we need to act with urgency to address environmental concerns by following through with sustainable practices and policy. At TransLink, our core business is a solution to the climate emergency. It's truly our raison d'etre, but we cannot do it alone. We must work together to make transit the first choice to get around. We stand ready, TransLink stands ready to make our award-winning system as reliable and as safe as it can be. But it must be supported by local land use and development policies that disincentivize driving if we're going to make a difference in our fight against climate change. Now more than ever, we need bold leadership. And I'm really looking forward to continuing this work with all of you to make transportation easier, greener, and more accessible. Next slide, please. That concludes my report. Thank you so much. And I will now take any questions that you may have.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kevin, for the CEO report. We'll now open up to any questions or comments. Mayor Kennedy Stewart.
Thanks very much, and thanks to the CEO for the report, and hello, everybody. Nice to see you. I have a question on the transit ridership numbers. Heartened to see that we're closing in on 60%. Can you give us some comparative idea across the country of where we are compared to other regions, other major regions?
I can get you the exact numbers on that. I know our team has that. My sense, though, is that we are one of the higher ones. I think out in Toronto and Calgary, I think they're still in the 40s. Again, don't quote me on that. I'll get you the numbers. But I think we are on the higher side of ridership recovery, really around, I'd say, North America. I can tell you that our bus system is certainly leading the way in that ridership recovery. And again, I'm happy to pass along those numbers. We've also done some good analysis on where in the region that ridership is coming from. And I think A lot of it is coming from the south of the Fraser. That's where we are seeing a good bit of ridership increase. I think it's around 70% south of the Fraser River in terms of pre-COVID compared to pre-COVID ridership.
And would you say these increases are, what would you say they're attributable to? Why are we gaining very quickly? Because this is like a 20-point bump in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I think it's been a good gradual increase. I think there's a few things. There's a lot going on with immunization. We see some of that ridership tracking along with the immunization rates against COVID. I think we're also seeing, it's important for riders to have some place to go. And as we see businesses start to open up more, there's places for those employers to go. A lot of employers are starting to more formally adopt kind of hybrid work strategies versus people just being at home where they've been for 18 months. And so as people are starting to go back to work a couple days a week, some of those restrictions that we're seeing that the province announced the other day are starting to lift. I think that's really encouraging folks to get back onto transit, recognizing it's a great sustainable way to get to work, to errands, whatever they need to do.
Great, thanks so much.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Vandenbroek.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Quinn, for that report. I just want to take this opportunity to thank you and your TransLink staff for the vaccination rollout you did in Langley City. Very much appreciated, and citizens have been commenting on it. So thank you very much. It made a difference.
Thank you, Mayor Vandenbroek, for your partnership in making that happen as well.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Vandenbroek. I'll just make a few comments about the CEO report. Really appreciate the update, Kevin. Obviously, the Mayor's Council is very keen to watch the updates on transit ridership and how it evolves. No doubt, I think we're seeing some positive trends, and we're trending in the right direction where we had been flat for so long, which I think is a really good sign. But I think the numbers are also telling us it's not a light switch that's going to turn automatically fully back on. It's going to be a gradual increase as we get back. The one question I had in follow-up to Mayor Kennedy Stewart was compared to some of the projections that we had in the fall, and I know it's still very early days, but are we kind of matching up with some of those projections that we had been doing previously, or are we a little bit behind or a little bit ahead?
Yeah, just to speak generally about it, we had done sort of a low, medium, and high type of projection, and so I think we're trending along that medium scenario. It's not as high as that high projection. It's not as low as a low projection. It's kind of the Goldilocks spot, kind of right in the middle. And so we are projecting at that rate, and I think that rate has us getting to around 80% of our pre-COVID ridership by the end of 2022.
Okay, no, thank you. Well, as I kind of see it, I think the activities that are going to be the biggest impactor is definitely return to work and the office component of the transit system. But I also think kind of just cultural and activities in the community, those are starting to come back, but they're certainly not fully back to where they were. And I think as those things come, that will obviously play a role. And I think I think we need to recognize our transit system also plays a big role with the tourism, and obviously tourism is not in anywhere where the place it was pre-COVID. So I think we still have a journey to go, but it's encouraging to see some more life come back to our transit system. The only other thing I wanted to make a comment was just on the work on Transport 2050. I know this has been a project of TransLink and the Mayor's Council and the TransLink Board for the past, probably 2 or 3 years. It seems like a lifetime ago when we launched our first public engagement at the PNE back in 2019. So it's been quite the journey. But obviously, I think it is a really bold and ambitious plan for the future, and certainly we want to continue to get public feedback on that work. I think the reality is that the long-term transportation plan that the region operates under is was originally called Transport 2020. So I think that alone tells you we're definitely due to be creating that long-term plan and major update with a plan that had served us very well, and so that we can do so into the future. So I want to encourage all members of the public to take this opportunity to kind of go through the draft. there and provide some final feedback. But I think there's some really exciting stuff in terms of kind of the ambitions for the long-term major rapid transit system, but also a lot of thought about other forms of sustainable transportation and how the region moves, and how overall all of the modes are going to work together to lead to a better region. So quite excited about that work, and obviously we're looking forward to, once the next round of public engagement is complete, to once again re-engaging with the Mayor's Council. So thank you very much for the update on that work.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any further hands on this, so maybe I'll just look for a motion to receive the CEO's verbal report.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
And it's carried. Okay, and I understand our open delegation is with us now, so maybe Mike, if you could introduce or connect Mr. Kunstler.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Joe, we've just joined you up. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Well, welcome, Joe. You may begin.
Well, welcome, Chair Jonathan. Thanks for having me today. This is your friend and big-time fan, Joe Kunstler. I normally watch the Mayor's Council meetings from home since you're on YouTube, and I normally don't have something pressing to contribute. But I've noticed in recent months that you've been having a lot of in-camera meetings, and then going for the in-camera resolutions. I'm mystified why you decided to go in camera, because some of us, including me, would love to hear how you arrived at some of your answers, like the endorsing the Transport 2050, which I generally support, and the 10-year vision. And I just find the use of these, of in-camera meetings instead of putting it onto YouTube, just a little mystifying. And I felt it was time, as someone who's an open government advocate in both Washington and British Columbia. I've filed what you call FOIs in both jurisdictions a lot, and watched a lot of public meetings, that I felt something needed to be said some way, somehow, in a positive tone by someone who is very pro-TransLink. In fact, I will conclude with this thought today. I consider TransLink to be the world's best public transit of all the ones I've written. And I've rode San Francisco, Seattle, Sound Transit, and now New York City. And I consider TransLink to be the best in the world. So with that, you may mute me. Please do.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Joe, for joining us this morning. And I do want to confirm, Joe, that the Mayor's Council is committed to be open and transparent in the work we're doing. And obviously, as you're seeing, we release all of the decisions at when appropriate. The governance structure at TransLink, as you know, is a unique structure that involves both the TransLink board and obviously connections with the provincial government. So there are some intergovernmental negotiations and processes that sometimes have to go through before items can come forward publicly. But I do take your point, and obviously we want to make sure we're engaging in the important discussions about the future of transportation in the region in an open and transparent way. So appreciate your comments this morning, Joe.
Thanks. Awesome.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of this morning's meeting. Our next meeting is on December 3rd. If I can get a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Great. Thank you, Chair. We'll